You're watching another great interview on Audio Inc. Radio. What's going on? It's Anne Erickson with Audio Inc. Radio. If you're new here, welcome. It's great to have you. And please subscribe. Also give this video a thumbs up. The legendary Devin Townsend is our guest, and we have a lot of great stuff to cover. Let's get inked.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Townsend, and you are listening to Audio Inc. Radio with Anne Erickson.
Very excited to be here with Devin Townsend. How are you doing?
I'm surprisingly well, all things considered.
Yeah, I know it's a crazy time. What is it like up there in Canada right now?
It's the same as anywhere. I was doing some interviews with some friends in Sweden and the UK, and I think it's all just varying degrees of the same thing. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that results in a in a kind of undercurrent of oddness that permeates all aspects of life.
I have to say, I love your setup. I've done a bunch of these Zoom things, and I think that you have the coolest setup for a Zoom interview.
Oh yeah, well, it was funny. It's thank you. But I also feel that when this first happened, I feel like I was fortunate enough in a strange way, way back in the beginnings of my career, to be forced into having to learn all these aspects. Like I had to learn how to produce and edit and mix, and that has served me well. And then when we got to this point, all of a sudden I had to learn how to do video, and I had to learn how to do OBS and all the aspects of how to make the streams and Twitch and everything work. And as awkward as that was, I think it's another cool thing to have under my belt, because it gives us the opportunity to do it like this now.
So congrats on the new record, On the Way, Order of Magnitude, Empath Volume 1. This was a really unique tour. So tell me about kind of the spontaneous, aspect of this tour and what made it so different from what you've done before.
Well, there's a lot of things, I guess. And I guess the best way to preface it would just be to explain that the methodology of my entire career has always kind of revolved around trying to uncover where I'm at the time, and then learn from that and move on. And so many records into it, it becomes clear to me once a record is done that you have a chance to sort of sit with it, and you have a certain perspective on it, an analysis of it, I guess, in a sense. And so much of my work in the past has been, and continues to be, so layered that the only way I've been able to do it live has been to do it with, backing tracks and click tracks and lots of computers. And, in my defense, that's really the only way I felt like I could represent it with any degree of accuracy. But there's really something that comes with playing the computers it gets old after a while. And so with this, I wanted to try it a little differently, and I wanted to try it differently in a lot of aspects. So we had this really interesting visual component to this show that was important for me to do, but I also wanted to try and represent all that layer and complexity without the computers, which required 10 different people on stage for once. And then the visuals had to be sort of real time with the performers, and the performers all come from a walk of life and a background that's not rooted in heavy music, which was a whole different thing there as well. But I guess, long story long, the reason for doing it that way is it gave me a chance to sort of try this stuff without that safety net of the computer and see if it would work. And I think it did, and it was a fascinating experience, and one that I'm now got under my belt. It's interesting to see where that has led.
Do you think that live music will forever be changed because of what we're going through right now with COVID?
Yes, I think everything will forever be changed. I can't think of anything that won't be. And that's not necessarily to say that it will be bad, but even last night I had two separate dreams about being in crowds of people. The year before last, I had a couple of really exciting experiences, and I went and spent a bunch of time in India, and I went and spent a bunch of time in China. And both those places have a population density that is crazy. And last night I had a dream that I was back in two separate dreams, one that I was in China, one that was in India. And in both the dreams, I was panicking because there's too many people around. I was just like, man, you know, how do I find a way to function with this amount of people? And I think that maybe all of us have got that kind of internalized sense now, to a certain degree at least, depending on what your view on this scenario is, of what is a safe environment to be in. And I think at the very least, it's going to take a while to shake that.
Right. I feel like even if tomorrow everything was fine and COVID disappeared, it would be so hard to jump back into that mentality that we had
Oh yeah.
before.
Oh yeah. And you know, I as extroverted as my career tends to be portrayed as, I guess, by my own hand, I'm not a big fan of being around people. I like my friends. I like certain situations that require other human beings, I guess. But in general, I'm just not a huge fan of being around people. So this scenario has also given me some time away from people, which amidst all the anxiety has also been kind of nice sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah, so you of course have the new live set on the way. And are you working on a new studio record as well with the extra time?
Yeah, I've always got more project than time. So I've got an album, I've got several albums I'm working on, I've got live records I'm working on, I've been doing podcasts and quarantine shows and all sorts of things. There's never any lack of projects for me. And I was saying on the last interview, some friends of mine they've voiced concern that I work too much. But my answer to that is like, well, what else am I going to do? Like,
Right.
this is what I bring to the table. Even the days that I take off, I like to go for a walk or read a book or do some meditation or do some exercise. But that's only a certain portion of the day. And then you're just like, well, I'm not going to scroll through Twitter for the rest of the day. So I might as well do some work.
Right. No, it makes sense. I saw your session with Sepultura.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I loved it. Tell me how that came together.
I have no idea. I mean, I knew the drummer. Uh, he's a fantastic drummer. I knew Paulo because when we were in Amsterdam, he has a bar there. And the sound man that I've been using for several years now, Stanley, is from Sao Paulo as well. And he was one of the original dudes with the Sepultura crew. And then he did sound. And so through Stanley, I met a bunch of people from Brazil. Eddie, who also ended up being the tour manager, and then Roger, who did guitar teching for Motorhead, but they all know each other, and they all worked with Sepultura. And so I guess when Sepultura was doing the thing, you sort of go into each other's radar. Oh, I knew Derek as well. A friend of mine, Tanya, has got a vegan thing she does with Derek, and they've got this roving interview thing they do about veganism, and they had actually interviewed me for that as well. So I think this, even saying this out loud, I think what happens with this industry is eventually you just don't know how to do anything else, and then you all get to know each other.
That's cool. Yeah, I thought it was random. I didn't expect to see you at the weekly session that they do.
It's random, but it isn't. I mean, I regardless of the type of music you do, again, I think you just become a lifer. And I think as much as maybe I've got a certain amount of a career, and as much as maybe Sepultura's got a certain amount of influence, I think if everything went south tomorrow, none of us are qualified to do anything else. Like, what else are we going to do? I worked at restaurants and I did some sheet metal fabrication poorly and made some surfboards. Like I polished surfboards for a while, and I worked at an industrial bakery. And none of those things are going to be able to keep me sustained at this point. So I think it's probably the same with them. So after a while, they're like, "Oh, you don't know how to do anything else either? We should do a show together."
I think a lot of people are like that, though, when it comes
I
to
agree.
their major career.
I agree. Yeah.
So, has anything positive come out of the coronavirus situation for musicians? I know the touring thing has really hurt, a lot of the industry, but has anything positive come out of this?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out what my knee-jerk reaction is, just to say yes, but I mean, I don't know why. I think there's something to be said for the tenacity that it requires to maintain a positive frame of mind through an environment of relentless negativity that benefits us as people and as artists. Because I think you can kind of take one of three paths with a scenario like this. You can either run with it and try and pivot your life so that you can continue to create, or you can be resistant towards it and go at it from the angle of fear and who knows, victimization. And then there's the other side where it sweeps the legs out from underneath you, and it can be the end of you to a certain degree, professionally or otherwise. And I think that it gives the industry an opportunity to see how much can be done in the face of this sort of thing. And it was a lot. And I think it ends up that we, at least I, didn't recognize the amount of things that I was capable of doing when the chips were down. And that will benefit anyone who takes that point of view in the future, because all of a sudden we got all this new skill set, like OBS or Twitch or podcasts or streaming or concerts or any of these things. It's like, for me, it was like having kids as well. Like prior to having kids, I didn't think that I'd be able to do it. I'd be like, there's no way I could be a father. There's no way. And then I found that you're just like, well, I guess you don't give yourself enough credit sometimes for the things that you're capable of. And a lot of times the ways that is tested is through adversity. It's when things are going great, there's no need to sort of see how you're going to rise to these occasions. It's just, it doesn't have to happen.
That's true.
So I don't know if that makes sense, but the obstacles create the need for solutions, and those solutions are interesting.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm wondering, are you an empath?
I read something interesting about people who consider themselves to be empathetic. And one of the opposing viewpoints to people thinking that they're empathetic is that maybe either they're dealing with PTSD and they become hypervigilant in terms of micro signals from other human beings and situations, so that you interpret what you're feeling as being that of what the other person is feeling, when in actual fact you're just on amber alert all the time. And I guess one could argue that that's a form of self-absorption rather than true empathy. And I guess to answer the question is, I don't know. I'd like to think that it's empathy over self-absorption, but I think part of my creative process is trying to figure that out.
That's fascinating. You're so creative. Have you always been this way ever since you were a kid?
Well, I've always been in my own head, and I'm creative in the sense when I was younger that if there was something that I needed to find a solution for, I could. But to a certain degree, I think maybe as time goes on, I've allowed myself to be more creative just because I care less about what people think. And then maybe when I was younger, I cared more, so it didn't come out as much.
Well, Devin, it's been awesome chatting with you. Congrats on the new record and video on the way, and thanks for hanging out.
You're welcome. Thanks for the interview, and take good care of yourself amidst all this chaos.
I'll try, you too.
I certainly shall.